pjnet.tv. It is 9 p.m. on the east coast of the United States on this, the 16th day of June 2022. We are welcoming first-time guest number 284 in just a few moments. And in half an hour, we're going to welcome first-time guest number 285. We're running our bumper. We are recording, streaming, and our chat room is waiting. We will begin a countdown to Studio 8 starting now. Well, good evening. Welcome. This is pjnet.tv. I'm Coach Prasick, and I have so much fun doing what I do, but the days that we welcome a first-time guest are special days on the pjnet.tv calendar, and that is the case tonight. Now, perhaps you remember not too long ago, Deb Haggerty of Elk Lake Publishing was with us, and since she has been on the program, she has referred many, or several, I should say, to come our way, and that is the case tonight. Please welcome Christy Post, all the way from somewhere up north, if I recall.
Well, it's great to be here, Mark. Thank you for inviting me.
You, Christy, and there's a kind of a surprise. No surprise, she has a book. She was referred to us by Deb Haggerty of Elk Lake Publishing. But your career, the trajectory of your endeavors in life are far from. Now, by the way, we were testing this earlier today, and this happened a couple of times. She knows exactly what to do. She'll be back any minute. But we're going to talk about Chris's book shortly, or toward the end of the program. And it's her first nonfiction work, because much of her work up until this time has been dealing in nonfiction. So we're just waiting on Christy to come back. It'll be any minute now, I promise you. She's good at this. She's working on it. There we go. 3, 2. Oh, there. I told you she would be back.
I'm back.
Chris, your professional work has spanned. Well, you spent quite a long time in what you call executive coaching, I think, or you're kind of that HR person back when HR was not a scary thing.
Well put. Yeah. Yes, for 30 years was self-employed, doing some HR consulting, but mostly two other things: executive coaching, as you mentioned, and outplacement, which is a service that employers provide to the employees that they let go when they let them go from their jobs. It's a service designed to help them, the employees, the former employees, get themselves back together mentally, and also figure out where they fit in the job market.
So this isn't you're fired. The scope of your work, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind obviously is, well, we need to get your resume put together here. But that is but the beginning and only a small part of what you were doing. Losing your job is emotionally devastating.
It is, absolutely. And we don't even talk about the resume for the first few days, because we want to figure out who this person is and what are they up against and where are they spiritually, because quite frankly, if they're not on track spiritually, most things in their life aren't going to go well either. Maybe they don't realize that, but it's the truth. So, there are all those things that we work through. First, we figure out, like Stephen Covey said in his book, in the 7 Habits book, that one habit I love: begin with the end in mind. So we would try to figure out, where does that person really want to go? Where do they really need to go? Where will the job market be open to them?
How long did you interact with these people? I guess it would. Was there a fuse that was lit saying, I'm going to work with you for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then you're on your own?
Months. It takes months to find. I was working with professional level people, and they don't just fill out an application and wait for the phone to ring. These are hardcore job seekers that have to go through networking and LinkedIn profiles and all sorts of background checks and things like that. It's a much more rigorous process the higher you go in the organization.
Were were you committed to them until they were placed, or was there a sunset?
Well, it would depend, so I didn't place them in a job, so no, I didn't necessarily stick with them until the very end, but I always kept in touch with them, even though the
Mhm.
employers generally didn't know that, because I wanted to make sure they landed well and they also had a lifeline, because sometimes I was the only person that could really understand what they were going through. But generally, I would work with people 3, maybe 4 months. It depended on the contract.
So how many times did you get called as a reference?
Actually, very rarely, because it wouldn't be fair for me to be a reference since I'd really never worked with
Right.
them on a
Hmm.
job. I could give a character reference, that kind of thing.
Well, today the situation is so different. Well, the culture is so different. It is refreshing to know that there are companies out there that are compassionate enough, even if somebody was fired with cause.
That's
You're not
true.
talking about just being laid off. They would pay you to work with somebody they fired with cause. That says a lot for the company you're working for.
Yes. Most of the time it wasn't with cause. Most of the time it was just no longer a good fit.
Right.
And that covers a pretty broad category.
I think we need to get back to some of those things where people help people. The way that we see employment here in the United States is very different from other countries. I'll use Japan.
Hmm.
In Japan, you don't just get hired; you become part of the corporate family. Loyalty to if you get a better offer from another company, that's a no-no.
Yeah.
Where here it would be applauded.
In Japan, I read not long ago that that is changing. I don't know. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not.
Hmm. Well, different cultures deal with it different ways. I was doing some mission work in a foreign country, and of course, it was hard to get in that country because we were seen as a threat to the local labor force since we were working construction.
Oh,
But employers were very reluctant to hire somebody because if you fire them, you have to pay them you have to pay them for 2 years.
right. Now that is true. Yes.
So it's different cultures cope with unemployment and labor force and all that
Hmm.
kind of stuff in very different ways. You've done some other things we talked about earlier today that some of them were rather surprising. We could start with the safe one would be executive coaching, but there's some unsafe too. I mean, there's more adventurous things.
Well, when I was in my 20s, which was a few years back, I decided I was in need of something that would really be hard to do, that would prove to me that I could tackle whatever I wanted to tackle. And so I started jumping out of airplanes. And once skydiving wore off, though, then I moved to Switzerland. I got married and moved to Switzerland, learned how to speak French, taught English at Berlitz in Lausanne, Switzerland, moved back to Pittsburgh after about 4.5 years, landed in Pittsburgh, raised the family and all that. Then my husband got transferred to California. So we moved to Carmel. And they don't speak French there, but they are different.
Unfortunately, if you want to know how things are going to be here in 5 years, just go to California and see how it is there. And unfortunately, that's a little too close to the truth.
Right. I used to say 10 years, but I think you're right. It's closer to 5 now, maybe even less than that. And then, of course, I started my own business along the way. And to get some visibility and credibility, I wrote a couple of nonfiction books, a workbook for my clients. I had a radio show for a while, not a TV show, Mark, but a radio show, not quite as good.
Yeah, TV probably hadn't been invented at that point. Yeah.
probably true. And then for 22 years, I also wrote a Sunday newspaper column for the Pittsburgh Tribune Review on workplace and career issues. So I've done a lot of different interesting things. Oh, and I gave some big speeches along the way too, which was another great challenge. I was so glad I had jumped out of that airplane in my 20s because a lot of these things that I tackled were kind of daunting.
Rather adventuresome, I would say. You mentioned Pittsburgh. I think that's the area that you're from.
Right.
And I have fond memories of Pittsburgh. I used to go there annually to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Uh-huh.
And back when I had money, we would stay at the Sheraton right there at the fork of Three
Yeah.
Rivers, and Three River Stadium was, of course, across the river. I mean, you could see it. And I can remember my father characterizing Pittsburgh as this dirty steel town. Pollution, uh, economic depravity. Just not a place you'd want to go.
Right.
But when I got there, in spite of being prejudiced by my father, I found that that place is cleaner than Disney. You can't find a cigarette butt on the sidewalk.
I don't know if I go that far, but it's a lot cleaner than it used to be.
Well, at least the area that I was in that area. I mean, we didn't
Right.
we didn't venture out too far. Okay, but I was impressed with I won't call it hospitality, but the tenacity of the
Hmm.
Steeler fans.
Hmm.
So while in Pittsburgh, it's good to be a Steeler fan. If you're not a Steeler fan, it's something you probably best keep to yourself.
That would be dangerous.
And we went several years, and I remember one year we had some seats kind of toward the end zone, so we had the cheaper seats. And
Mhm.
gosh, there's some tough women up there, snaggletooth, waving their terrible towels, and went to eat at the Tin Angel when I understand it's closed now. But
It is. What a good that used to
what
be.
a what an experience that was. So most of your writing and, in fact, speaking experience has been in nonfiction.
Right. But then,
But
during
then, yeah.
didn't everyone change? And I was no different. I thought I have some extra time here because my executive coaching business kind of shrank. It was non-existent.
Yeah.
I went to the library to fill my time and I tried to find some novels that had characters roughly my age. They're all so young and I
Hmm.
couldn't relate. I couldn't relate at all. So I prayed about it. And then I had shared my 45th high school reunion, and that gave me the germ of an idea to write a novel about three women who got back together after 40 years graduating and have their reunion. And of course, I wrote it for many reasons, but I have to tell you, Mark, one of the key reasons, if not the key reason, is the spiritual thread that winds its way through the stories of each of these three women. Totally different spiritual journeys, but they all took steps throughout the book. And this is the first book in a series of three. So in the next two books, they'll all be walking farther and farther in their journey. And it's just been a really great experience to create these women. And of course, a lot of their experiences come from experiences that I have personally had or I've heard from others. But it's a composite of so many experiences and so many people that I think anybody could relate to these women, provided they were over the age of 50. I wouldn't recommend the book to a teenager.
Oh, now you got me interested. This book, first of all, the subjects that are on there for the cover illustration, it must be me getting older because they don't look 40 years from their senior year. Okay, they look a little younger than that. Their hair's a little longer, but the older I get, the harder it is to remember things. Do you happen to remember the day that this book was published?
Oh, you're baiting me. On my 70th birthday, April 29th of this year, 2022.
See, the good folks at Elk Lake Publishing did that as a mnemonic to help you remember the occasion. It wasn't about celebration or anything. It's just that way you'll remember when it was. So this is the first of a series of, well, how many, or is that classified?
Well, I'm hoping it will be three because there are three main characters. And then once I'm done with that, I'll probably be close to my mid 70s and I may or may not feel like writing. Who knows? I'll see what other adventures God has for me.
Yeah, tell me about your. You said you had a radio program. What was that about?
Well, it was about career and workplace issues. I would talk for a half an hour on a particular topic, and then I would have a guest on, and we would take questions.
So you would what go down to the radio station and get in the sound booth, and how did it work?
Exactly. It was the old-fashioned way.
Hmm.
Had to drive to the station, put on the
Put on
microphone
the
and
put the
all the
headphones on. Yeah,
mhm.
have that big microphone right there. You know,
Oh, I feel very official.
and of course the radio station produced it after. Or was it live, or did they post produce it?
It was live. And if
Live. Now,
you
what
know
kind of radio station would carry that? Were they desperate for content?
and I think there was a little delay. But and anyway, I always used to say, the line is, "I had a face for radio."
Oh yeah. Well, I was in radio as well
Ah,
in college. That's how I paid my way through college,
uh-huh,
and because I actually did pay my way through college,
uh-huh.
and I worked at a 100,000 watt FM rock station. To this day, it's still the number one station in Tallahassee.
Wow.
And before that, I had worked at a little daytime AM station in my hometown. You know, that's a big jump. You know, you think you're not scared, and you get in front of that microphone, and you realize there are more than two dozen people out there. There's thousands and thousands. That didn't intimidate you at all, though, did it?
Well, the first day I remember I was so nervous, I did the program standing because I had so much nervous energy. But after I got through the first one, then it was easy.
And how long did you do that? How long did you do that program?
Oh, I only did it for a year. It was too exhausting every week to find a guest and yeah, well, to have guests and do all the
Yeah, we have two a night. Yeah, but we have Facebook, and we have people like Deb Haggerty at Elk Lake Publishing uh, sending us folks. In fact, well, we won't take time to do a promo for future programs here, but folks, yes, we will. Go to pjnet.tv, click on schedule, and you'll see, that we're booked well into the future, and God has blessed us with some wonderful people. There may be some old people out there watching this thinking that they are in the autumn of life, and that they had their turn, now it's somebody else's turn. You're not in that group, are you?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, it's so funny you would say that, Mark, because I was just writing a scene in book two where one of the women is getting married, and the pastor says to her and the man she's marrying, "You may think you're close to entering your golden years, but you're not. God has many adventures in store for you." In fact, I'll tell you this, my mother-in-law is 95 years old and she is still in ministry today. Wonderful woman. I think the Lord will use us as long as we're willing. It's not able because He makes us able.
It's a cliche, but it's true. God doesn't call the equipped; He equips those He calls.
Yes.
So yeah, have your mother-in-law hit us up. We'll have her on the program, and she can share her story too, and it would be great. Now, Writers Conference. We only got a minute left. Writers Conference. Have you been to any? Did you go to Blue Ridge? Are you a conference junkie, or you just do this?
I have done a few things online because I only started this nonfiction writing, or fiction writing rather, during the pandemic. And of course, nothing was open back then, but I'm looking forward to doing some in the future. Blue Ridge, ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers, and perhaps some others.
Wonderful, What a story. Chris, it's great to see somebody as energized as you.